Mark Cotty from the National Disability Coordination Officer Program. I look after Region 15, which is Northern Victoria, a big area. So I'm putting this video together because I do often presentations around pathway options for students with disabilities. I mean, the sessions are designed for either teachers, parents and carers, or their students themselves. Because I do cover such a big area, I put this video together so no one needs to miss out as long as they can get a hold of the link and they can see the video. So my head will pop up every now and then, but mostly it'll just be a voiceover of the PowerPoint presentation I do. One thing to mention before we get started is the video should be used in conjunction with the electronic version of the resource guide that comes with this presentation. So, and what that is a hyperlink. It's a hyperlink that way. Hyperlink document. So any of the resources I mentioned here today, you just click on that hyperlink, it will take you straight to that resource. And the reason I do it via hyperlinks rather than explaining it all and basing stuff on websites is that material will change very quickly these days, and so it's better off that you go to the source where it might have been updated rather than me give you some old stuff. Hopefully. So here we go. Let's get started. I'm going to start with a bit of general conversation around preparation and planning, which is really important, and then I'll pop back in when we go through some of the other stages. Catch you in a minute. Barriers and challenges come in all shapes and forms and are not necessarily specific to someone faced with a disability. There are a whole range of issues that may impact on any young person as they make their transitional journey from school. This may include things like transport, lack of experience, social isolation, motivational impacts, poor support networks. The following video features a mix of specifically targeted support programs as well as some mainstream services. It is by no means a definitive list, and also note that some of the services or resources mentioned may have actually changed since the time of this video creation. So let's start with what I call preparation and planning. Note that there are a lot of resources and supports to assist you with your transitional journey. Here are some of my go-tos. First one I want to mention is the Department of Education Victoria, which has a range of linked resources and advice to assist parents, teachers, carers and students in the preparation and planning phase. To check out their full range of services, I suggest you go to the Disabilities web page, but please note that there's a lot of change happening around career advice and development by the department at the moment. So I am expecting some of these resources to be very much enhanced and changed as we move through 2018. One of the favourites for the NDCO program is the Get Ready for Study and Work downloadable student workbook and parent guide. These resources are based on the 10 top tips for young people with disability. They contain information, contacts and activities to help students make a successful transition from school into tertiary study, work or post-school option programs. So be sure to check those ones out. Another one of my favourites is the Picture My Future. This is really about that preparation and getting your knowledge around the individual student or child. This is an online training course designed to teach you about Picture My Future and how it can be used to support people with disability as they explore their goals for the future. And just to note, this could also be used quite effectively for any NDIS planning and the NDIS stuff, which I'll mention later on. A necessary favourite for all career planning is the My Future website. That's a web-based platform providing information about career planning, education and training options for Australian jobs. Lots of links and good resources there around the planning and goal setting stuff. A more recent one for me is this thing called Portfolio Gen. This site can help you construct a virtual resume of interest and help capture an individual's abilities rather than focusing on disabilities, and it has really great sharing options. If you're into a bit of technology stuff, or the student has a good electronic demonstration portfolio of what they can do, this would be a really good platform to use. And I actually think a lot more foundation courses or those day service preparation courses could be looking at this as a template or a scaffold to get the individuals ready. I look forward to using it not only myself but with my own kids. So let's move into supports and accessing those supports. You need to know that there are a range of supports available, either government or community based. My greatest advice in this area is one, do not assume eligibility for specific supports based on third-hand information. It always pays to ask the support service directly. In some instances, you may not be eligible for direct support, but the agency or service that you contact may have additional suggestions or advice depending on the situation or solution being sought. And two, there may be a dedicated support group or network functioning locally in your community that can offer experiential advice so that some common mistakes can be avoided. Very worth looking in your local, I'm going to say your local directory. These days, I'd Google it. When we talk about government, the first one I want to mention here is the Department of Human Services. That's your federal arm. They provide access to social health and other payments and services such as Centrelink, Medicare. I note that even if you are not applying for a welfare support regime, contact with DHS may be necessary so that you become eligible for a range of other supports. Check out their website for all their links and up-to-date information that may be applicable. States also have additional support mechanisms from a government point of view. In Victoria, that's the Department of Health and Human Services. They have an extensive suite of resources and information on their webpage, and I would be logging on there, and you'll see that there is a disability specific section that you can access. So whilst on the subject of government, this is probably the best place to mention the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which is coming to all parts of Victoria either now or in the very near future. The scheme will not necessarily replace services mentioned through this guide, but it is designed to work with existing mainstream services. You may or may not be eligible for NDIS, and the scheme is very much a functional based assistance scheme, not a medically based scheme. If you're not aware of NDIS, I highly recommend linking with their website and subscribing to their information services. Also note that there are already conversations taking place as to what the NDIS may establish specifically for young people transitioning out of school. The most likely model at this stage is what's called the SLES scheme, or the School Leaver Employment Support scheme, which will replace the formerly state-based Futures for Young Adults funding model. For information or updates for this program, jump on the NDIS webpage or Google the term School Leaver Employment Support. Skills and Job Centres, another Victorian initiative, can be a really good first port of call for students looking to start training or work, or just getting some career advice when they're leaving school. The centres also support workers needing to reskill or retrain, and they're also there for employers or industry, so they know how to meet their workforce needs. They're aligned with your local TAFEs, and they're a great free service with no necessary eligibility criteria. Geez, that was hard to say. These centres continue to develop their offerings as their program matures, and some are really developing some good special skill building or workshop sessions specific to their local area. So you need to check out what your local one is offering. Okay, so that's preparation and planning. Brings you up to sort of speed with where you need to be. You may already got ahead of yourself as far as you know all this sort of stuff, especially if you're a teacher or carer, you may already know where they're up to. It's that next step, where am I going to go, that we need to really focus on. And this is our transition planning pathways. This is the main guts of it. What I really want to point out to you though is it's not necessarily a linear pathway, even though I present it that way. A lot of these things can be done together. For example, you can be volunteering at the same time you're looking for work, or you can be doing this stuff at school already before you leave school. I understand that if your child's 18, it might be a bit late for that, but lesson learned, lesson valued. So here we go. First category I want to talk about is further life skills, and that's what I've called it. So this is when the individual's not quite ready to get right into the guts of further study or further work, or really needs some more independent living skills training. So let's get into that category, further life skills. First one I want to mention is what are called day services. They provide activities for an individual, usually in a group setting. This helps to enhance their community and social participation. They've been around for a long time. In the past they've been block funded, so from the state governments. Now this is where NDIS has probably one of the greatest impacts for people with disability. That the individual now has the money to spend on a particular day service program if it's in their plan and suits their needs. So this is a bit of a change for this sector. Well, a bit of a change. It's a really big change for this sector. So rather than me talk about it and the changes that are happening, I think it's one of those things you have to keep an eye on through your web pages and websites. And one of the ones in particular, it might be the National Disability Services website, which is the peak body for all day service programs. So it might be worth checking out both of those links that I've put in for this section of day services. And also revisit the NDIS link. Another one I want to mention is what's called transition to work programs. There's a number of federal and state government funded initiatives that will come and go depending on election cycles. And sometimes they get confused where they belong. Transition to work is focused usually on building a young person's skills, confidence and abilities to get ready to enter employment. So they're not quite ready for job seeking at that stage, and this is a set of programs to get them ready for that. To get an idea nationally of what's out there, please check out the Transition to Work webpage from the government. And there's also, in regards to the state-based stuff, there's the Skills First webpage. One of the last ones I want to mention specifically under the skills for the life skills section is volunteering. The value of volunteering should not be underestimated, and something that can be commenced whilst the young person is still at school. Whilst there are some formal volunteer coordinating agencies in most town centres, it is worth bearing in mind that volunteering can take place in pretty much any context of your local network settings. So these include your family and friends, your sporting or recreation clubs, your community support agencies. For more information on the value of volunteering, check out their resource fact sheet at Volunteering Australia. Okay, second category, and one of the most important ones, is further education. So this is your TAFEs, your universities, your private RTOs, and might be even online training, that sort of stuff. Local learns are included here, foundation studies. So be mindful that further education regimes can be quite complicated, and I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. So really it's going to depend on where your focus lies and where your pathway sort of heads as to how in-depth you want to look at each of these categories. I'm only going to mention them quite briefly. One thing I always like to remind people around education is you've got to be mindful of what you're trying to achieve in a short-term and long-term point of view, as opposed to the costs. The question of why you're undertaking further training is really important, and it should be directed a lot by the individual. The more you move away from those foundation level training those certificate 1 level training courses. Universities. There's a number of supports that universities offer to students with disability. They're usually managed by what's called access and equity officers within each of the organisations. And a special mention here, they'll also include assistance when applying for special schemes, such as a special entry access scheme. That gives them access, or gives the individual access to finances to help them support the changes and recommendations that may be necessary for them to complete a successful, not only educational life at university, but also a social aspect. So each university will handle this a little bit different. I check out the TAC site, or the Victorian Tertiary Admission Centre website. Next one I want to mention is TAFE. The Victorian Skills Gateway is a one-stop shop now of Victorian vocational education and training, and it'll help you find the best option for you. It has been developed by the Victorian Department of Education and Training, and I've included their link there. But also note, all TAFEs have dedicated disability liaison officers to assist students with disability. And I encourage making contact with the relevant disability liaison officer prior to any enrolment, so that you can consider all the possibilities that might need to happen to make the training successful. Also note, for both university and TAFE options, the NDCO program has specifically designed guides. These guides have been developed to provide information about key transition considerations when entering further education. This information includes planning for financial support, study options and disclosure. Check out the guide as per the link. Another one to mention here is the Learn Local organisations right across Victoria, and they offer a range of education and training programs designed to meet specific learning needs. In a lot of instances, these Learn Local colleges are going to be a very suitable option, but this does depend on what's on offer in your area, because they do offer targeted sessions specifically with students with a disability. To find out more, obviously you visit the link provided. Also note, there's a range of private training companies available in the marketplace. This includes a range of possible distance educational online options which may very well suit some types of disability. However, a lot of these services may have limited support options with students with a disability, and this needs to be considered. The next cycle or series of pathways I want to talk about is really one in particular, and I call it work and study. So this is what would be apprenticeship or traineeship. The words are interchangeable in some circles, but there are some differences between how they're applied in fine detail. For the purpose of this video, I won't go into those so much, but what you really want to know is that apprenticeship or traineeship is a contract between an employer and a worker that they're going to get paid to learn. So that brings in a component where they do further education at the same time that they're working and hopefully progressing and learning something. There's two things I really want to point out around apprenticeships that are important from my point of view. One is that you can do them while you're still at school, so they're a really great transition practice in itself and career advice and guidance program. The second thing is that they are highly supported in different ways. I'm going to go through those supports for you. So let's have a quick look at work and study. So in regards to some of those support options, apprenticeships have at their base a training employment contract administered by an Australian Apprenticeship Support Network person who acts as a liaison between all parties. This includes the administration of government assistance payments such as a living away from home allowance and a disability wage support option, which may include off-the-job tutorial, mentor and interpreter assistance. Also note, there are what's called Apprenticeship Support Officers. They give support and guidance to all apprentices aged 15 to 24 in their first year of apprenticeship. They offer advice and assistance on personnel and workplace issues and work with registered training organisations, apprenticeship network providers and other service providers to deliver an integrated apprenticeship support service. And you'll note their link there. Other supports include what's called apprenticeship field officers. I used to do that role a long time ago now, or it feels like a long time ago now. Basically, they step in when things don't go right under the contract, and they have a regulatory power with the Victorian Regulatory Qualifications Association. So again, additional support. But also note the additional support that you get as part of being in an apprenticeship and traineeship. So the individual will usually undertake some sort of formal training. So all the previous supports as mentioned under further education, in most cases, will also apply. And also there's a thing called the Group Training Organisation who employ apprentices and traineeships and place them with host employers. They provide a certain amount of flexibility over the apprenticeship. but as part of that, we'll offer mentorship, advice and support for both the apprenticeship and the host. Alright, we're up to the last category already, and this is what I call work. So this is the labour market, open employment, or not necessarily open employment field, but work in general. So we're not talking about further education, we're not talking about other life skill preparation, we're going to get a job and we're going to work. What I really want to point out before we get into this though is a lot of the services that I'm going to mention here have eligibility criteria that are governed a lot by the government as through the DHS, Department of Human Services, which I've already mentioned, you know, a Centrelink example, where you may need to get an assessment to see whether you're eligible or not, but not all the time. So I'll reiterate before, don't guess around your eligibility, check it out first. Let's get into it, work. Open employment. Many young people have good networks that lead them straight into open employment. If not, it's worth considering job service agencies. So Job Active is the Australian Government employment services system that supports job seekers and employers. A lot of apprenticeships and trainees will be advertised in this marketplace via the Job Search Australian web link. But also note, being registered as a job seeker through this system also opens up a range of extra support such as resume preparation and possible some job placement incentives. Disability Employment Services, or DES providers. Job seekers with disability, injury or health conditions may be able to receive assistance to prepare for, find and keep a job through the DES system. The DES providers are a mix of large, medium and small, for-profit and not-for-profit organisations that are experienced in supporting job seekers with disability and also experienced in helping the businesses put in their practices that support the employee in the workplace. To find out more, including a range of clear, concise fact sheets, I highly recommend a visit to the Job Access webpage, which has been revamped recently. It's very clear and concise, as mentioned. Two more work options that need to be mentioned here. The first one is the Australian Disability Enterprise. In the old days, they referred to these as sheltered workshops. That's not what they are. They're a not-for-profit organisation normally who provide meaningful employment for people with significant disability who would otherwise not really be able to work. That's because they provide them with a business that makes products or services that has a lot of supports built around the individual. The other one to mention is self-employment. And this is, have you ever considered self-employment as an option? This could be anything from lawn mowing and cleaning right through to more complex services or products. And if you're thinking about self-employment, I suggest that you check out the new Enterprise Incentive Scheme or NEIS program that's available through the government. And before I go, because really that's all the transition option stuff to cover here in this video, is a couple of additional resources that might be relevant for you from the NDCO program. So the first guide I want to mention is Your Right to an Education Guide, a guide for educators and people with disability. It features the Disability Discrimination Act education standards, which became federal law in August 2005. This is a real popular booklet that I run out of the hard copy of quite often. The electronic guide is just as good and probably better because we know it'll be kept up to date for you at the time of access. The other one is a thing called Disclosure. It's a personal decision. A very interesting subject that pops up nearly everywhere I go in different forums and different settings. And different people have a different view on this no matter where you go and in what context. So very worth having a read of that one. Again, electronic version is just as good because we know it's going to be up to date for you. So there you have it. I'm Mark Cotty. Thanks for listening. It's been great to be able to get this video out to you. If you need some further advice, don't hesitate to contact me on the details provided. I'm also happy to come out and talk to any community groups or smaller groups, big groups. I don't mind. If you any questions, queries, just email me or ring me. I'm happy to get back to you. Don't forget, there is a newsletter you can subscribe to. All you need to do is email me on the email address once a month, or search for me on the NDCO Region 15 webpage, Victoria. Cheers, thank you very much, see you soon.